Coming up, fresh off another win and now sitting at 4-4, are the Brooklyn Nets too good to tank? We dive in next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Armbrecht. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your purchase. And Doug, you heard it at the top. Let's get right to the meat of it. Are the Brooklyn Nets too good to be a tanking team in the 2024-25 season?
What's happening? They're 4-4. How's this even possible?
All the talk putting the Memphis Grizzlies on the schedule. Thank God they're done playing them this year. It's a real problem.
All the talk over the summer, all of our, just adamant, especially me, like adamant nature of the commentary where it's like, don't worry about it. This team stinks. They'll have no chance. The offense can be horrible. All this, wrong. Now they're 4-4. If you look, and I'm going to tell you the worst possible thing you can have as a Nets fan. This one's tough to look at. Well, first of all, they're just fit. They're fifth in the East. Okay,
That's
with
right.
the fifth best point differential, even though it's slightly negative. The East has been kind of a train wreck so far, but they're fifth overall in the East at 4-4. But then even worse, when you go over to Tankathon right now and you run a sim lottery again, 8 games into the season is where you want to be doing this. This is good use of your time. Go over to the sim lottery and you're going to see that the Bucks are projected to have the first pick, the 1-6 Bucks. Great for the Nets. They have their pick. No, friends. Protected 1-4. That Bucks pick, if it goes 1-4, goes over to the Pelicans for the Drew Holiday trade. Nets right now sitting at the 19th and 20th pick on Tankathon. 19th and 20th because they have the Knicks. The Knicks are slotted in there too. 19th and 20th, and then the 27th. It just couldn't go worse. It couldn't go worse from. It's great. We're rooting for these guys to win every game. But if you're thinking about the state of the Nets and how these things shake out over time and what these last few seasons about, they finally commit to doing something that they haven't done in like 20 years. And guess what? They can't even do that right. Because they're out here beating John Morant and company in Brooklyn to go 4-4. Someone explain it to me. I need it to make sense.
And I don't even, like, as you just mentioned it there, inside of it, it's like after all of this, I still turn around and I go, when the games are on, and like you said, you're playing John Morant, and all of a sudden, you're in the game. You're leading the game. It's down the stretch. You knock down a couple triples, and now it's about a key possession. Up 2. Can you close it out? I'm like, yeah, close it out. Nets win. Final buzzer, 106-104. And then you go, yes. Shoot, wait. Like, you're being taken on that ride now, game over game. Ultimately, I think the real question is this impacting the tank? 4-4, 8 games into the season. I actually think the Milwaukee Bucks situation is almost more concerning in terms of adding that extra value pick with where they're going to stand right now. But do you believe, and I want to both answer this 100% with where we are right now. Do you believe that what's gone on through 8 games and just where this team is right now and the way these veterans are talking in post games, do you believe that this is a problem for the tank agenda for the Brooklyn Nets 8 games into the season?
They're considerably better than I thought they were going to be, and that is a little bit of a concern. And so the fact
we
that
thought no matter the amount of effort, they would lose games, right? Even maximum effort, best yes. players out there, that they were going to lose games. And turns out, best players out there and maximum effort is actually really hard for a lot of teams to beat.
And so from that perspective, it's like, well, I was this wrong about like sort of their competitive, one, sort of how competitive they've been. And 2, how much the veterans are playing and how well they're playing to be able to hang with all these teams. Hung with Denver all overtime, obviously lost to Detroit, beat Memphis. These aren't rollover teams that they're hanging with or beating, right? So they're not favorites to win every night. But the fact that they're sticking, that the game plan is sort of working, that the structure that they're running is working, I'm a little concerned. And I was a little concerned about like their lockup. Well, I'll tell you 2 things. One, it looks like they're going to smash this over wins. That bet is looking real bad. Lock that. The second I bet that one, I locked that one onto the over.
By the way, when we took that and you said, I'll take the under on 18.5, I said, I'll take the over. I was saying taking the over like 20 wins. I wasn't saying taking the over like a 41-41 team at the end of the year, 500 ball club.
So and there are plenty of ways to tank late. I will say though, some of these teams, I won't include Milwaukee. They got Giannis, they got Dame. They're going to turn around. They're going to win games. I don't think that they're not going to end up with the first pick or something like that. But some of these teams like Utah and Washington, who are just total dust already, basically, I get a little concerned around that. That's where the odds being flattened out at the bottom of the lottery probably are going to help the Nets a little bit here, because some of these teams look, like I said, like Utah is just toast already, right? Yeah. Washington stinks. And those teams stink considerably worse than this current version of the Nets, which can change, but early in the season returns, they're just going to be in a lot of these games in a way that I just really didn't see coming.
Yeah, equal percentage at the top of the lottery and we talked about this. You don't have to be the worst record in the league. You just need to be within the right window. So from that standpoint, you look at it and you say, yes, 4-4, but let's see how the next 4 games go. And let's see how the next 10 games go. It clearly is a better product on the court. I think the tank is certainly in more peril than we ever thought it was going to be, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Now the question becomes, what is Shawn Marks going to do? What is the organization going to do? Because as you said at the top, this is an organization that has always struggled to pick the direction and go with it and live with the results and stay true to their path. So they finally commit to the rebuild, but now these veterans and some of the young players, the Jalen Wilsons, the Cam Thomases, now it's all bubbling up together and you go, or maybe we go the other way. And we do think about if the Bucks are ready to blow it up and Giannis does become available this year, or any other team with the right collection of players that would ultimately make us swing the pendulum back the other way. I think that's very unlikely. I think the Nets get what the agenda is here. But from a fan base perspective, you can see it where they all rejected the notion of Giannis. But that's because everyone believes in the tank. And once the tank goes away, I wonder how everyone starts to feel there. Coming up in a second, how Shawn Marks can control the process of this tanking season and why players like Dennis Schroeder and Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith all have a big role to play in making sure the Nets still end up closer to the bottom. We'll get into that here coming up in just one moment.
All right, listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program. Hooks you up with points on your rent every month. Pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or a hotel stay with 500 plus airlines, like those numbers, and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. It's designed to meet your lifestyle. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That's joinbilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure to use our URL so they know that we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba to start earning points with your rent payments today.
And when you're done with that, head over to Gametime. Oh, you know that when you get over to Gametime, you're going to go ahead and get yourself an opportunity for curated seats that makes it easier to find the best prices on those tickets that you want to get. I was over at a Red Bulls game. Playoff atmosphere is still in the tri-state area right now, but maybe you want to go check out the Brooklyn Nets on the 13th, hosting the Boston Celtics. Beginning of the year, you didn't think it was going to be so easy. Now, lay 15 points. I think Brooklyn Nets taking a sweep. $43 tickets. You're also going to go ahead and get seat views with a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guarantee on Gametime, or they'll credit you 110% of the difference, baby. You got to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Why, it's game time. All right, my friends, as we continue today on the Locked On Nets podcast, talking about whether or not everything's blowing up and the world is falling. Don't stare at the sun as the meteor strikes the earth. Brooklyn Nets 4-4, way out of the lottery odds right now. We listed here, if you're watching on YouTube, second topic of Shawn Marks' pivot. And I actually think the better way to frame it is Sean Mark's pivot, as in maybe we got to move some of these veterans sooner than we anticipated. You want to have these guys in there for leadership. We've talked extensively about the value of Dennis Schroeder. How far do we think the Nets will take the good vibes before you need to make the decisions to ensure that we end up in that top 4 category, that we end up with a 14% chance at the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft?
I mean, I'm kind of over predicting what this team does. Like it's always, again, talk about bet where we've gone wrong betting. I mean, always wrong. And then,
by the way, we both took Memphis laying the points. Big mistake for the host picks in this
wrong every time. Wrong every time. And so no, I think that they're just going to play this out. I think the vibes are good. I think what you want to avoid is the culture of tank, which doesn't work over multiple seasons. I think it's worth it when you can do it for a season or two, because you do want the chance to get guys like Cooper Flack. Like, these guys do not come around every year, as we saw from last year's draft. Years where you have a chance at generational type players, then you should embrace that, I think, if you're not going to win the championship, right? And you have like this, you probably have a capped ceiling on how far you can go, right? Like this team, I mean, take this for what's worth. I mean, I don't think they can win like a playoff series or anything like that. But again, well, so I think, go ahead.
No, because I think that's the interesting part of it, because I agree with you. Let's not mess up the vibes. You have a lot of young players on this roster too. You want Cam Thomas to get a taste of the good times here after being, kind of jerked around a lot. You know that he's in a potential walk year. Jalen Wilson's coming on, right? Noah Clowney, he misses that game, but you want his development. So you do want all those good vibes in the locker room. Do you think that there's a threshold here where if you're riding the good vibes, not the Giannis's of the world, but I wonder if it's just like you get to the deadline and it really is, hey, listen, high price points, the kind of high price points that Sean Marks has put on these veterans. And if not, guess what? We will ride this out. I wonder how good the record has to be where the conversation does kind of turn to, well, we're a play-in team, right? Like, maybe we can win that play-in game. And then we're going to go to a playoff series. Now, are we going to get dumped 0-4? Probably, depending on matchup. But I do wonder about those dynamics of trying to tweak the roster in a positive way. If you lean into the results are what they are, and if this team is going to win basketball games and make the play-in tournament, then we actually do want to be competitive. We've heard this in years past. Hasn't always worked out, but they've been a team that set that goal. And if they have a chance to achieve it, it feels like they'll do what's necessary to try to enhance that rather than strip parts away at the deadline.
Okay, so I don't think they'll do that. So I'll say that. I don't think they're going to I don't think they'll ever go into improvement mode. So I don't think that, I'm not really worried about that happening at all. But the part where, and I think, we might end up just talking more about this Memphis game like tomorrow too, like as we lead into it, because we're kind of just going high level with them being 4-4, because it's such a crazy storyline with this. I mean, we're getting texts from other people on the Locked On network being like, Nets exclamation mark, like things like this. This is the kind of stuff I'm getting texts from other people that don't even really follow basketball. Again, like, I always know the Nets are part of the conversation when there's a couple people I get texts from that sort of like tangentially follow the NBA. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, the Nets must be perking people's ears up here. But the part where I think that I think a lot of this will come out in the wash. Again, there were 8 games into the season, so it's like a little bit more than 10% of the way there. It's not like we're some crazy amount in here. You might, they could hit a part of the schedule where it just kind of goes south. Honestly, Dennis Schroeder gets hurt and it probably is kind of over, right? So there's things that can happen here that would pretty much decide it for them, I think. And I think there's way more things that could decide it for them on the negative way than the positive, right? They're not going to be making improvements to the team. It's not like they're going to trade for better players or go all in for a superstar. I don't think those things are going to happen. So there's more scenarios that the Nets are going to be out, like going to be going toward the bottom of the lottery than toward than toward the playoffs or whatever. Yeah. But I will say too, what we've seen from other teams in this era of tanking and all this stuff is teams that sort of stay competitive while also getting the math right, are in the best shape, right? Because like OKC's, like teams like this where it's like, okay, we're going to stay competitive. We're going to keep trying. We're going to have a system. We're going to get good players. We're not just going to lose games on purpose, maybe until the very end where it's going to improve us a little bit, right? OKC did this a couple years ago where they were just throwing out complete and utter nobodies 2 seasons ago. And it's like, okay, we'll go for guys like that. And then, but the rest of the time we're going to try because this is what people want to see. And this is what the players want to do. This is what worked for the Nets last time, right? When Katie and Kyrie ended up coming in as free agents, it was because this team had like a little engine that could mentality. And that is appealing to a certain group of people, like superstars and stuff. So again, I want them to get Cooper Flagg and Ace Bailey because I just don't think you get many chances at guys like that. And I can understand why you wouldn't just like throw in the towel right now when you have like a good vibe alert going on, because I think that is worth something.
And oh, by the way, it's like, and I agree with you because you look back to last year. So you have 4 teams in the Western Conference of 31 wins or less. So the Jazz there, 31, 27 for the Grizzlies, Spurs, 22, Blazers, 21. Eastern Conference last season, you got 4 teams that are under 31. The Hawks, the Nets were there 32. Then it's 25 for the Raptors, 21 for the Hornets, 15 for the Wizards, and 14 for the Pistons. Well, that's 8 teams. 8 teams that you can get all the way up to the conversation around having 20 plus wins. Now, if you want to be in that right sweet spot in the 14%, we get that. You need to be in the bottom 4. But my point in that is, remember down the stretch of last year, once it was out of reach, we saw that they keep Noah Clowney got more of his run, right? You start to lean a little bit more into it. You got less concerned about playing veterans, their amount of minutes that they needed. So I think in the long term, you can ride this wave pretty far, and it could be the last 20 games of the year that you cement and solidify where you're going to be in the standings. You would have to spike. You'd have to be walking in 62 games through the season and say, we're 10 games above 500 and we have a problem. As opposed to, we're muddling around 500. We're a couple of games under. Now we go 5-15 over the last 20. And guess what? We're right back where we want to be. So, and I do agree with you. Like the Brooklyn Nets, man, if you're a Pistons fan, if you've been a Wizards fan, these things get ugly. They get ugly fast, and you get a fan base that is very disenfranchised around supporting the team, even if you think the possibility is there to get a high draft pick and to build for the future. In some instances like Detroit, it's because every time you guys do this, you're bringing a young player, but the team never seems to get better, and there never seems to be optimism there. So I do think that the Nets organizationally understand that, and as long as it is a good brand of basketball, and that's why it's different too, even last year, the entire season, you and I talked about it all the time. It was the least fun team to watch in the NBA. There was no belief from you or I that they were going to get there in the end and make the play-in tournament and make the playoffs. It was miserable. So when you're selling something and the team, flat out, this team is not going to achieve that goal as currently constituted between players, head coach, etc. To go into this year where you have this agenda that you feel like you can control, and then you have this good vibe, and you have this head coach that feels like you've put that piece in place, feels like you have young talent, it makes it very easy to kind of sit back, enjoy the ride, and hopefully trust that when push comes to shove, they'll make those difficult spots. Let's go ahead and come back in here in one moment and talk about where the Nets stand, and if there's little notes about the schedule as we look forward that maybe could take this 500 ball club and reframe it right back into where we thought they would be coming into the year. We'll do that in just one moment.
And before we get to that, I'll tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. No better time to get in on the action over on FanDuel. You got the NFL stuff going on. You got NBA in full swing. You got FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, right now over on FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, on the NBA. It's all in one place. You're getting a hunch in the middle of the game. You check out the stats. You see the play-by-play. You just kind of have a feel for what's going on. It's all going to be on the same page where you place your bets. It's not going to be something that pays off right now, but if you go, they got all these season award stuff on FanDuel. Jordy Fernandez no longer dead last in the Coach of the Year odds right now. Listen to these losers below him. Quinn Snyder, plus 20,000, please. Brian Keefe, Wizards, plus 20,000. Not our friend Jordy Fernandez, plus 10,000. Just right above those guys. And climbing, I'll say. Just a little taste of what you can get over on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 real money bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
And when you're done with that, fellas, hey, you ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims so you can feel confident knowing that you can, get hard and stay hard whenever you're in the mood. Hims is chasing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments with the comfort of doing it all from your own couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you. It's discreetly packaged, and it's also for free. No insurance is needed, and no low price covers everything from treatments and ongoing care. With hundreds and thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. All right, my friends, as we tie a little bow on today's Locked On Nets episode, coming off of, as we mentioned, the 106-104 win over the Grizzlies. Doug said it. We'll talk about that more on tomorrow's show leading into the next game for the Nets. There are some good takeaways, including Cam Thomas doing what the head coach, Jordi Fernandez, said he wanted him to do more of. Not able to score? Why don't you facilitate? We'll talk about those assists as well. But from a schedule standpoint, Doug, when we're concerned potentially about disrupting the tank, what do you see out there that maybe says, hey, just give it a little bit of time and we'll get this thing on track?
Yeah. So like what we're going to want to do is check in about 12 days to see if we're still feeling the same way here, because this is the schedule for the Nets over the next 12 days. They have the Celtics 7-1. Then they have the Cavs who are 8-0, and those two teams are just absolutely boat racing other teams right now. Then they get the Pelicans. We'll see where they are. They've had all kinds of injuries. But then they get the Celtics again. Then they get the Knicks twice in MSG. So that takes us through November 17th. So that's the next 6 games. I mean, if you had to really make a guess right now about where the Nets are after that, I would put this at like 1-5, maybe 2-4, right? If they let's call a win against the Pels, maybe. And then
a surprise somewhere.
Maybe they take one of the Knicks games or something like that on the home and home. So I just think they just haven't, like, that's a meaty part of the schedule where if they were 5-9 after that point, then we're not having the same conversation, right? And because again, the Celtics and the Cavs, just having to go Celtics, Cavs, Celtics in 3 or 4 games that's literally probably the hardest schedule you can have in the NBA right now, unless you threw OKC in there. So I just think that some of this will come out in the wash. And this is why it's great to have hot takes, buddy, because the hot takes, you can just hot take it. You just hot take it every day from now till infinity around what's going to happen. But it's easy to forget this other part where it's like, oh, and they're going to have to play some of the best teams too coming up. And then we'll just kind of see where they are.
Yeah, and I guess, it's funny because if you dial it back, as we all know, the first 8 games of this season, I think we even did this in the offseason leading up to it. Hey, the first 15 to 20 games, what are we going to see? Where are these scheduled spots? Now, obviously, but by the way, just as a reminder, the Nets are 4-4. They lost the first 2 games in Atlanta and in Orlando. It's because they've beaten teams we didn't expect them to, that they actually got themselves to 4-4. But over those first 4 games, things look a little bit different, whether it's injuries for Memphis. They're a little bit funky to start their year. You talk about losing a game to Detroit. In some ways, that game is, I think, also the reminder that on any given night, and it's not just the Nets, it's a lot of the bottom tier teams or the bottom half of the league, you can lose to anybody. You can just lose to some of these teams, and there's still going to be matchup problems. The funny thing coming out of this last game, even winning over Memphis, is remember, you didn't have Noah Clowney in this one dealing with the hip. Ben Simmons resting on back-to-backs. Now, they still got the win, and it was because of a lot of great players that we'll talk about tomorrow in terms of individual performances. But there's going to come games when the matchups are just too difficult, when the size advantage for other teams is just that kind of thing we know the Nets can't overcome, or just talent level is going to bear itself out. I will be fascinated. You mentioned those next 12 days. It's 6 games, and if they go 2-4, and now you're sitting there at 6-8, then we're going to do it again. Talk about the next 12 days, right? And those next handful of games. And for every stretch of 6 or 8 games that we go through, and the Brooklyn Nets keep holding themselves on the edge of 500, or that one surprise when you don't anticipate, it will start to grow a little bit in terms of how we look at where they are as we get towards, say, 20 games. I always think quarter of the season is a good check-in point where they're at. I remember myself, I won't speak for Doug, I said coming into the season, we're going to turn around and, maybe they win a game early against Atlanta, but cut to 20 games in, they're going to be 7-13. Well, there's almost no way right now that you feel like that will be the case. So how close to 500 are they going to stand? And we'll look at those chunks of time and maybe start to get concerned when the Detroits of the world show back up on the schedule, when the Wizards show up, where this team from an effort and coaching standpoint and talent standpoint, they're not going to lose those games. It just doesn't seem like that's more likely now than when we first thought coming into the year. That being said, I do not have high level concerns about where they'll be in the end.
Yeah, I think like bottom line, I'm not okay. I think there's two things that are true. I think that they are considerably better. Go back to the top here. I think they're considerably better than I ever thought they would be. So I'll take the, L as it were. Around how bad they were going to be. That was just dead wrong. They're playing specifically because Schroeder. Honestly, Schroeder's so good. Like been so good. He's really the key. It's like he's given them so much, and I really just underrated what that contribution was going to be.
And that might be the entire answer. It's like, well, maybe you do just trade Schroeder and it kind of solves the science without making every single wholesale, change to ensure the tank. You just take away a really good veteran ball handler, and that kind of helps you get back where you need to be.
Yeah, it's frankly what they were missing last year for long stretches. It was just like someone to organize the offense, and Dinwiddie just kind of stood in the corner for a long time. I don't think it was his choice. I think that's just like they were like, hey, we're going to run actions through McHale and Cam the whole season. Dinwiddie, you stand over here in the corner and guard the other team's best player. And like they just didn't run pick and roll, which again, this is like basketball 101. You just kind of have to do that to have a functional offense. You don't have to do it all the time, but you have to do it sometimes. And they just weren't interested for long stretches.
Okay, so the Nets took 100 years to sort that detail out about basketball, but they got there in the end.
So I think that so I do think they are already considerably better than I thought they were going to be. But I'm also not too concerned because I will still go to until we get reached like game 60 or something. And if we're still talking about this game 60, which I don't think we're going to be, but just in case if we are, there's still ways to really just tank your butts off for like 22 game stretch or something like that after the All-Star break, after the trade deadline. And so I just don't think there's too much risk still at this point, with the understanding that they are a little better. Remember a couple years ago, Dallas, when they were like on the edge of the playoff sphere, and they just decided, nah, not for us this year, lost the games, and they got Derek Lively. And so that's a little bit of a different scenario because like they didn't draft at the top of the lottery, but they said, nah, these last couple games we're just going to be not trying. And they did it. And so you can do stuff like this at the end.
The one fascinating final thought for me, point about this team right now, is between Jordi Fernandez, who like clearly, he has job security, understands what the long-term picture is here, but also like he's coaching to win every game. He wants these guys to be improving. He's calling out things he needs to see from guys, right? That's one piece of it. The other piece is like the players, right? When you hear the way Dorian Finney-Smith talks about after games, when Schroeder talks, it's like, this happens in the NFL a lot, which is different. It's harder to control that. It's any given Sunday. There's only 17 of them. But sometimes it's like the locker room, the coaches, the players revolt against the organizational agenda. And we've said this before. It's like, it doesn't matter to me. I'm playing for a contract. I'm playing for the next thing. You want me to help you be really bad so that you can jettison me next season and start the rebuild? That doesn't solve my future as an NBA player. So that's the one thing that I think is, in a funny way, like fascinating to watch, the locker room being like, hey, you can tell me you want to do whatever you want. The fan base, media can say whatever they want about what this team is. We're going to keep going out and try to prove you wrong. And how far do you push that, as you say, 60 games into the season, where all of a sudden the organization has to send down that message? Jordi Fernandez, you may not like it, but you got to do some things here over the last 22 games to make sure we get where we want to be.
And sometimes you can say, hey, coach your hardest. This is who's playing and who's not, right? Like, it's just like, there are other ways to do it.
For tonight, do your best.
Do your best. This is the roster. So there's other ways to pull this off. All right. We're going to talk a little. There was just high level talk. We do want to get into some of the stuff that happened in this Grizzlies game too. Like you said, Cam Thomas breaks out with 6 assists, had a bunch of other stuff kind of go right, including Claxton moving into the starting lineup, although their hand got forced a little bit with that one too. So never know what the plan is with this stuff because they just eventually had to do it. But I was always wonder if that was actually the plan. And be some interesting kind of thoughts around what's going to happen now that he has gone back into the starting lineup. And when old friend Ben Simmons returns to the action, which he will coming up for the next game. So we'll cover all of that tomorrow. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets wherever you listen to podcasts.
Talent wins games, okay, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. Now, that's Michael Jordan, and that could be a very concerning quote for the fan base of the Brooklyn Nets.
All right, we're going to get out of here. Much appreciated. Everyone's rocking with us. I screwed that up. I did the back. I did the thing again.
You want to go back? You want to do it? You want to do it again?
No,
what do you think?
No. The non-tanking things throw me off. Who said it again? Who was the quote by?
It was Michael Jordan. It's just, one of the
never heard of him.
all-time.
But we'll assume that it's one of the all-time great poets. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball.